Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody at home. How many people for the first time coming to class tonight? Welcome to all of you. Welcome back to everyone else. Welcome to everybody for the first time at home. Against the Stream is a Buddhist meditation community that I guess we've existed for about 15 years or so here in Los Angeles. And several levels to practicing Buddhist path. One is certainly the meditation, and a lot of people come for the meditation, learn some meditation. It's only one piece of it. Meditation is an important, a core key component to practicing Buddhism, but then there's the whole path, which is much more than just our meditation, our speech, our action, our livelihood, our ethics, wisdom that we are trying to develop, all of which is connected on some level or another to being mindful, to being present, to being aware, awake. And a key piece of it is community, is meeting and connecting with and communicating with other people who are also trying to be mindful, who are also trying to be aware, awake, free from suffering, and on the path together. The Buddha says or Buddhism says there's three refuges, and refuge, which means a safety or a place of protection or protection from suffering. He says it will come from taking refuge in Buddha, which means not the statue, not the religion, not the person, but the actual term Buddha, which means to be awake. Take refuge in your own potential to be awake, which to me simply means something like to see clearly, to see reality clearly as it is, and to respond wisely, to see clearly and respond with wisdom to reality. And the wise response is the response that ends suffering, not creates more suffering. And so, like, when we're creating our suffering, we're not awake. We're not Buddha. We're stuck in samsara, in this realm of wandering through clinging and craving and self-centeredness. He says, but we can take refuge in the inner potential that all beings have, all of us. The potential, the ability to wake up. So that's a lot of what we're doing here together. We're taking refuge together, not in a formal religious sense, but just in like, I want to wake up. That's why I'm here. I want to be as free as fucking possible. How much freedom can I get? And you take refuge in the Dharma. And the Dharma on some levels is the teachings, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the truth. The Dharma translates as something like truth, the truth about reality. And so it's both like learning the teachings and contemplating them and studying them and saying, does this make sense and how can I apply this? So like a theoretical grasp on Buddha's teachings, on Buddhism is important. But more important than starting to know what the Four Noble Truths are is experiencing, knowing the truth directly through your meditation, through your actions, through your way of being in the world. And the third refuge is community. And that's sort of where I was going with all of this, which is we come together to, actually take refuge in each other. And that is not like I'm just here to meditate and I'm just here to listen to the teacher, but actually I'm here to be part of a community and to take refuge in the relationships of other people who are trying to be wise. We live in a world where wisdom is incredibly rare. And, you come into a room like this and it's not like everybody's all, super wise, a bunch of hooligans in here. But we're trying, right? It's a community of people who have the intention to be mindful, have the intention to be kind, to be compassionate, to be forgiving. This is a community of people who want to wake up, who want to take refuge, who want to become a refuge. And it's a core reason why I open meditation centers, why I teach, is not so much just to educate you or guide you, but to facilitate you getting to know each other. and the community getting to know, and have those friendships and those connections that are sustainable outside of your coming to class once or twice a week or however long often you come to class. So one of my ways that for many years I've been doing, and then during COVID I wasn't doing it and started again a couple weeks ago, is start by, before we meditate, take a few minutes to introduce yourself to some of the people around you, some of the people in the room that you don't know yet. And if you're you don't have to make physical contact, you don't have to shake hands or hug, but just introduce yourself to some of the people around the room. Even if you have to stand up because both of the people sitting next to you can stand up and introduce yourself to someone. And at home, I'm going to throw you into some Zoom room breakout groups, and you guys can introduce yourself to whoever you get connected with in there. Just take a couple minutes to do this.
Oh, okay. I missed it.
It's hard to stop once you get started. Give a few more seconds for the Zoom breakout rooms to come back. I want to acknowledge that depending on how active and engaged you have been, that can be, even just that can be pretty intense, just being in a room with, I don't know, 40 people, however many people are in here tonight, 40, 50 people, something like that. It's intense. A lot of people are still just emerging from isolation, and then talking to strangers is a little intense anyways. And but it feels like even more so these days. But I think that's part of the refuge and Sangha is what a great place to practice. Like these are the kind of people you want to practice being uncomfortable with, who are going to like hopefully be kind and supportive and empathetic to like, oh, you're suffering too? Yeah, me too. Like, and honest about it rather than, you know, it's like so much of our conversation is that humility of like, yeah, we're here because we're suffering. And we're not pretending like we're not. We're here because we are interested in ending suffering. And so ideally, that's a lot of what we're trying to develop is the kind of connections that will include all kinds of difficulties and conflicts and opportunities for forgiveness, and, you know, with people who are also willing to stay in the conversation with as much skill as we currently have, and without the unrealistic idea or unrealistic expectation that like, well, hey, you're like a meditator, you're supposed to be good at this. You know, we're only as kind of as skilled as we are at the moment, all of us on this kind of learning curve of trying to be more present, trying to be more friendly, trying to be more patient and forgiving with ourselves and with each other. And meditation is one of the main ways that we increase those skills. Part of it's talking to each other, and then part of it's just sitting and going inward and seeing our own mind, our own emotions, our own, the Dhamma, the truth is revealed right here through our own attention, rather than looking out there for the truth. You know, one of the kind of core simple ways of Buddhism is like everything is in here. All of the truth will be revealed, the causes of suffering, and also the ability to end suffering through turning towards your own mind, not ignoring it, not transcending it, not, you know, going on some vision, you know, quest. I don't know what the term is, but not some astral projection where you're avoiding reality into some other, but here, right here in your own body. We start the meditation with the first foundation, the body, present time awareness of the body. And at one point the Buddha said, all of the Dhamma, all of the everything that you're seeking, all of the truth that you're looking for will be revealed right here in your own body. That this body that causes all of your suffering, this mind and body that crave and have aversion, and this self-centered mind that is the problem, is also the solution. And by paying attention to it, by being mindful of it, we will directly experience reality as it is and build the skills to meet it more wisely. So let's do that together for a little while. Find a way to sit that's upright and relaxed. And when you're ready, allowing your eyes to be closed, your posture to settle, finding an upright, relaxed position, letting the hands rest, letting the eyes be gently closed, releasing all of the unnecessary tension that we tend to hold in our face, releasing the brow, the jaw, shoulders, chest, and your belly. See if you can soften your belly so that you're upright without being tight or uptight or tense in the stomach. Establishing mindfulness in the body. There's so much going on, sensations from head to toe, emotions felt in the body, our energy level, alert or drowsy, anxious or relaxed. We'll choose to place our attention on the breath as a focus point, as an object of awareness. Breathing in. One knows I breathe in is the Buddha's teaching. Give your attention, your full attention to your breath. Let everything else be in the background for now, all of the other sensations and thoughts, sounds. Mindfulness is present time, non-judgmental awareness, the quality of investigation, of curiosity, interest to what's happening. And it works best if we bring the intention to be kind and accepting, loving kindness and radical acceptance as the lens through which we experience the body. Even if you can't quite do that yet, just the intention to try to be friendly and kind towards your own mind, no matter how many times it wanders off into planning and remembering. Gently returning to the breath for now. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. Receive the full sensations of each inhalation, each exhale. With a kind awareness, a presence that investigates the impermanent nature of the breath, how it has a beginning, middle, end. When you notice tension, your jaw becomes tight, or your belly or shoulders. As you exhale, soften. Release the jaw, the belly, the shoulders. Tension is often a sign of resistance, avoidance. Releasing, relaxing is an act of compassion. Of non-clinging. connecting and sustaining as much as we can present time awareness of the body, sitting, breathing. Revealing the reality of impermanence. And perhaps beginning to see how, even though you are trying to ignore your mind, the mind just keeps thinking. Plans and memories, hopes and fears. In some ways, paying attention to the breath and body teaches us so much about our mind, the impersonal nature, the non-volitional tendency of the mind to continue thinking even when we are not paying attention to it. This body that is comprised of the four elements, water element. Be mindful that almost 3/4 of this physical body that feels so solid is actually liquid. The air element experience with each breath, that this body itself is porous, is a breathing organism. The skin breathes. And that it's hot in here. I'm feeling the temperature, the 98 or so degrees core temperature of your body. Feeling the air conditioner cooling the outside. The core temperature high 90s. Fire, heat. We experience the earth element with the solidity, the calcium, the bones, the skeleton. Upright skeletons meditating together. These elements forming skin and bones and hair and teeth, all of the organs, tendons, and a nervous system that experiences pleasure and pain. Bringing mindfulness to the feeling tone of all the different aspects of your body. What is feeling pleasant, perceived as enjoyable in this moment, if anything? What is feeling unpleasant, painful, hard to bear, uncomfortable? And how much of this experience, this body and heart and mind, we're experiencing neutral sensation. You can feel your arms and legs, but they're neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Front and back, awareness of the body, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but here. Rather than ignoring the mind, include the sounds. Open, inclusive awareness of your heart and mind, body. Thoughts arising and passing, emotions being felt, known. And as you bring your non-judgmental awareness to what's happening moment to moment, pay careful attention to the tendency to cling, to crave for more pleasant experiences and less unpleasant ones. The instinctual drive away from pain towards pleasure. The more we pay attention, the more we see how the mind is constantly craving and clinging. We set our intention to let go of those thoughts, let go of your views, your opinions, let go of the past and future. Just be fully present here. Breaking our addiction to figuring it out. Just feel the next breath. Just observe the next thought, rising and passing. Any questions about the meditation practice, the instructions, the experience that you're having as you bring mindfulness to your breath and body and heart and mind? Please.
You said something interesting, like, at least to me, a couple weeks ago about just different things to research. Like you mentioned attitudes, energy levels, and those are just unique to me. And like expanding on some of that, like different places to look.
Yeah. Question or comment about how in the instructions tonight and maybe last week too, I throw things in there like, become mindful of like the energy level in your body and kind of places to direct the attention. Like, okay, what's not just the breath, and often mindfulness, we can get stuck on just, am I breathing in or out? But the Buddha's instructions are more expansive. He says this whole body that is made up of the 4 elements and the 32 parts, and this nervous system that experiences pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And when you're mindful, you can start to feel like, oh, kind of I'm anxious. And I feel that in my body, and this vibration and this tension, or I'm tired and I feel that energy of like this torpor. And you can be mindful of more than just breath or thoughts or sounds, just the gross manifestations, but more and more subtle. What else is happening here? And that's kind of the inquiry. What else is happening here right now? And using the mind to investigate, am I breathing in? Am I breathing out? And And sometimes I do the 4 elements like I did tonight, but that's I find it so interesting. And it's one of the traditional things that the Buddha taught in the first foundation of mindfulness of, just know like this, like 3/4, 70, whatever percent of this is like a water body. And we think like I'm solid, I'm a meat body, flesh and bones. And really like we're mostly saline, like we're mostly the same shit that's in the ocean. We're mostly that same, fluid that we're in the womb with, is the body. There's this water body. And then there's a little bit of earth and temperature, and meditating on like it if you're cold or you're hot externally, but just tuning into like, it's 98 degrees in here, which is too hot. I don't like to be that hot. When it's 98 degrees out there, I'm like, fucking, it's hot. But it's always 98 degrees in here. And just being able to, with mindfulness, feel that temperature. And then here I'm cranking the AC. So you're like, well, I don't feel 98 at all. It's like 72 in here. It's freezing, but not in the core. And so being able to bring that investigative awareness. What was the other piece? The attitude, right? And so then when we expand to the mind, there's what's happening, the process of thoughts arising and passing. There's the contents of thoughts, right? This is a plan, this is a memory, this is a hope, this is a fear, this is judgment, this is resentment, this is lusting, this is like, you start to see your mind and see what your mind is doing. But then there's also this sort of attitude that your mind is thinking with, right? And sometimes you can have like all kinds of unpleasant thoughts arising, but there's sort of a friendly attitude of your mind. It's kind of like, I really fucking hate you. Like with kind of a sense of humor, or like I noticed that like my mind's attitude has a lot to do with how personally I take what my mind is doing. What is the kind of environment in which these thoughts and emotions are arising? And you can tune into that and you can start to see it. And the more you do loving kindness, and the more you do compassion, and the more you create a wise attitude, a relationship to what's happening in your body, what's happening in your heart and mind. And you can check in with it. And of course, all of mindfulness, and I say it all the time, but it's harder to do, or easier to say than to do, which is non-judgmental awareness. So, because right, when you turn towards your mind and your attitude, you're like, well, I want to have a PMA, right? Positive. I want to have a positive mental. I want to have a friendly. I'm trying to do that. But then non-judgmental awareness actually turns towards your mind. It's like, no, it's not friendly at all. I've got a real fuck you attitude in my own mind, and it's sad, and it's depressed, and it's whatever it is, it's my attitude is loneliness, like I'm meeting the loneliness with this core belief of I will always be alone, or rather than loneliness is present, but that's okay, right? Different, if you have this, does that make sense? Like if there's a friendly attitude towards a difficult emotion is much different than when there's a really tight, taking it personal relationship towards a difficult emotion. And you can't just make it happen. I'm a fan of Bad Brains, punk rock mantra of like, keep a PMA, a positive mental attitude. I'm a huge fan of that. And you can't make that happen. We don't have the power to just decide, I'm going to have a positive outlook. You can state that as an aspiration. You can keep redirecting to having a more positive, a more friendly. It's what we're doing in meditation, but you can't make. But if there's anything that we learn in meditation, I think, is like, you're not actually in control of your own mind. You have some influence. You can train your mind, but you can't make it be kind. You say, mind, be kind. And your mind says, fuck you. Maybe. My mind does. Maybe yours doesn't. Maybe yours is like, yes, okay, I will be kind now. A lot of influence over, especially the longer we meditate, over that internal environment. And it's like the breath. You're not really in control of your breath either, even if it feels like you are. The more we're mindful of the breath, the more we see like, my body's breathing me. I'm not, like I can have some influence and I can choose to take a deep breath or shallow breath, but really like if I relax, my body just is breathing. It's automatic and I'm not really in control of it. And then you go to sleep and you keep breathing. Like it's not really like I am not breathing. The body is breathing me, whatever that is. I wanted to, there's these 4 little books. I did one the other a couple weeks ago. Ajahn Amaro, one of my favorite teachers, did these 4 miniature books on the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes, and came from a retreat that he was teaching, where he was teaching this retreat on dependent origination, the 12 links of dependent origination. And he was looking at dukkha, the first noble truth, and which is the unsatisfactory or the suffering nature of human, unenlightened human existence. He was looking at it all through dependent origination and looking at it all through the lens of addiction. And not just for us recovering addicts, but for human beings. And this model where he's just like, basically, in some way or another, the Buddha was saying, you're suffering because you're addicted to pleasure. And if you can break your addiction to pleasure, you won't suffer anymore. Right? And so a lot of us, myself and so many of the Sangha, the community, are in recovery from, substance or behavior addictions. And so we, like there's a way in which the kind of language around breaking addiction makes sense to us because we've done it to alcohol or drugs or certain behaviors or, but this kind of final frontier, like of breaking your addiction to pleasure and developing a non-attached relationship to pleasure. And maybe the final frontier, which is breaking our addiction to our minds, breaking our addiction to the part of the mind that takes everything personal, I, me, mine, and that doesn't have that positive mental attitude, but has a fear-based survival instinct driving its craving and aversion. I pulled up I've done this, I haven't done it for a while, so I'll do it again, but I pulled up the 20 questions of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is how people like if you think you might be an alcoholic, they say like, well, check out these 20 questions, and then you can diagnose yourself. If you answer yes to like, I don't know what it is, more than half or something like that, or if you answer yes. So I'm going to do this and contemplate it, but instead of drinking, thinking. Do you lose time from work due to thinking? Is thinking making your home life unhappy? Do you think because you are shy around other people? Is thinking affecting your reputation? Have you ever felt remorse after thinking? Have you got into financial difficulties as a result of your thinking? Do you turn to lower companions and inferior environments when thinking? Does your thinking make you careless of your family's welfare? Has your ambition decreased since thinking? Do you crave a thought? Do you crave thinking at a definite time daily? Do you want to think in the morning? Does thinking cause you difficulty sleeping? Has your efficiency decreased since thinking? Is thinking jeopardizing your job or business? Do you think to escape from worries and troubles? Do you think alone? Have you ever had a complete loss of memory as a result of thinking? Has your physician ever treated you for thinking? Do you think to build up your self-confidence? Have you ever been in a hospital or institution on account of thinking? Well, it says if you've answered yes to 2, the chances are you're an alcoholic. If you've answered yes to 3 or more, you are definitely addicted to your mind. So I want to shift to Amaro's book, and this is actually about appreciative joy, and the name of it is Just One More. And how often does that thought arise in your life? Whether it's about potato chips or thinking, I've already kind of contemplated this 3,700 times, but I'm going to go over it one more time before I get to sleep. Let me just think about this a little bit more. And the core formula of Buddhism is that it's our relationship to pleasure. It's craving, Taṇhā, craving. This is the Buddhist word. Thirst, that is the cause of our unhappiness, is the cause of our suffering. And that it's not your fault. Bad news is it's here to stay on some level or another. The good news is it's not your fault. It's just what it's like to have incarnated as a human being and with a nervous system and a survival instinct, and there's craving. We all have it. And, if you are a recovery person, it's not just because you're an addict that you have craving, it's because you're a human. And all of the non-addicts also have craving and suffer about it all the time. And, this sort of recovery thing of like, it's your alcoholic thinking is mostly bullshit, actually, when you start to understand what the Buddha said, which is like, it's actually just your human mind that craves. Now, the addict or the alcoholic is an extreme manifestation of the normal craving tendency that we all have. It is, everyone has craving for pleasure. Not everyone drinks to the point of dependence and addiction. Not everybody, there are people that can moderate substances. They're mythical a little bit, I think. It's true. It seems to be true. There are people that can do that. And then there's people who can't. As an aside, the Buddha was pretty clear that if you want to do this path, whether you're an alcoholic or an addict or not, it's best to fully abstain from drugs and alcohol in order to maintain mindfulness consistently. Because we have a present time awareness based practice, and you can't be buzzed or high or intoxicated and also mindful. It blocks mindfulness. And so he's like, if you really want to stay awake, let go of the recreational drug and alcohol use, period. Now that supports, it's the 5th precept of Buddhism, supports a lot of us who are in recovery, and we're like, good, I need to anyways, that's supportive of me. And then there's a lot of people who are like, wait a minute, what's this bullshit? I came to get spiritual. Now you're telling me I can't get high? Wrong cult. I'm going somewhere else. the second chapter of the book, he calls, this is from a Dharma talk he's giving, and they name it, desire is a liar. And just, how often have your desires misled you? And you are so convinced, I need just one more, I have to have, not just drugs and alcohol, like just all of the time in your relationship to pleasure, in your relationship to people, places, whatever it is. And how often is it leading you down a dead end? He says, when the mind says, I must have, or she's got one, I need one of those too, or I've got to have a better one than him, we shouldn't consider that it's telling the truth. I like that. We shouldn't even consider that our minds are telling us to the truth when it says things like this. I have to have it, just one more. Now, and that's where this sort of thinking problem, it's not that the mind thinks that it's a problem, it's that we believe it. That we think, well, I had this thought, so I have to believe it. It's our identification, it's our clinging to the thought, it's our belief in it. He says, you shouldn't even consider that it's true, that it's telling the truth. It's an impulse that the mind is coming up with. Certainly, we don't have to go along with it. Did you know that? Did you know that you don't have to go along with what your mind is telling you to do? Because I did not know that. Which I'm pretty sure is why I'm a crackhead. Was why I'm an addict in the first place, is because my mind just kept telling me to chase pleasure, and I just kept going, yes, sir. And maybe normal, maybe there are some people who actually know, you have a choice over whether or not you obey your mind. I did not know that. Before I started meditating, before I started bringing mindfulness, it was like a revelation. It was an intervention. Wow, my mind, I don't have to do what my mind is telling me to do. And so, Amaro is just like, as though it's simple logic. It's an impulse that the mind is coming up with. Certainly, we don't have to go along with it. If we learn to watch that impulse and recognize that it's a lie, we will not get caught in it. Then we won't have to create the feeling of disappointment or lack. We will find that we are much more content and happy with the way things are. Such a simple, sounds so good. If I just stop believing the deluded parts of my mind, the confused part, the just one more, the I have to have it, the core craving. And he says desire is a lie. I like to make a distinction between desire and craving. Because I feel like desire says I want it, but I don't have to have it. The feeling of like, oh yeah, like I want it, but I don't have to have it. I want life to be pleasant, but I can tolerate all of the unpleasantness. It's the I have to have pleasantness all of the time where I'm suffering that seems to be the problem. He goes on, even if we don't get what we want, we will realize that nothing is missing. Even when your mind is saying you have to have it and you want it, and this is liberation. Not that you no longer have those thoughts, not that you no longer want, but that you don't have to get what you're fine even when you don't satisfy your desires, your cravings. He says we can learn to use the structures of the limits of a retreat. This is on a retreat, a monastic life, or those that are part of the lay life as a good opportunity to explore these themes. To look at the mind's habit of chasing after a desire or an aversion. We can make an effort to not follow the craving, but to know this is a feeling. This is a very potent feeling, perhaps. It's very strong, but it's just a feeling. The mind might make a strong case. I can't stand this. I've got to get away, or I've got to have some. But we can learn to know that as a movement, a wave, a feeling in the heart, to know that the craving, that desire, is a lie. It's so fucking convincing, though. How often are we fooled by the mind's lie that we have to have it, and then suffer about either getting it and then suffering about like, fuck, it didn't work. I got what I wanted and it was too impermanent. That craving is repetitive. It's just, I need more now, one more, or a million more. Or you don't get it and you think, oh, I would have been happy if I got it. It's a lie. It's not the truth. It's not the whole story. It's merely a mental impulse. When we are able to recognize that, this is a feeling of liking and the mind is trying to run away with it. This is a feeling of disliking and the mind is trying to run away with it. At that very moment, we're looking at the bridge between feeling and craving. You know the difference? So in meditation tonight, I said, like, be mindful of your breath and your body, and now investigate what's pleasant, what is feeling pleasant, what's feeling unpleasant. And that there is a ability to say, like, this is just pleasant, and I don't have to cling to it. It's impermanent, pleasant thought, feeling, sensation, emotion, attitude. But there's this, without training, there's this almost instant pleasant attachment. I like it, I want it, I want to keep it, I want more of it. And it's not a lack of morality, it's not just your traumatic childhood that's making that happen. It is your survival instinct. This is normal for everyone. It's pleasant, I want it, I want more. We're looking at the bridge between feeling and craving, second foundation of mindfulness. If your mindfulness practice is only paying attention to your breath, and you're not opening to the second foundation, which is identifying what's pleasant, what's unpleasant, what's neutral, you're not going to ever get to the place of what the Buddha is teaching. You're never going to get to the place of changing your relationship to pleasure and pain and learning to be and to your mind. And so we use the breath as an anchor. Start mindfulness of breathing, get present here. And then when you're present here, even just a little bit present, investigate your relationship to your perception of the sounds, of the thoughts, of the sensations, what's pleasant, what's unpleasant, what's neutral. And then you start to see it's not pain equals suffering. Because for the most part, the untrained mind, you think like, if I'm uncomfortable, I'm unhappy. What we're doing is saying, actually, it's possible to learn to be uncomfortable and totally happy. Completely at ease with discomfort, because we so radically shift our relationship to, we develop compassion, we develop tolerance, mercy. And so it's no longer this pain equals suffering. Pain with resistance, with aversion, with judgment, with fear, with a lack of acceptance equals suffering. But it's not pain's fault. It's the aversion that's causing the suffering. Likewise, with pleasure, you start to see there's the feeling and the pleasure. It's pleasant, so I have to have it. I have to be attached to it. It's just pleasant. It's not pleasure doesn't equal happiness, but it also doesn't equal suffering. It's our relationship. How do we respond to that pleasant moment without training clinging aversion? That is the most helpful place to bring our attention. We are coming to the bridge and choosing not to cross it. We can recognize, yes, this is a strong feeling. This is very compelling, but I don't have to cross this bridge. That's a tremendous power we have. The freedom to make that choice. And essentially, this is how we can liberate ourselves from the cycles of rebirth, the cycles of addiction. We can train our minds to recognize that we have a choice not to cross the bridge, to not let the mind get absorbed into craving, clinging, and becoming, and then to experience directly the freedom and peacefulness, the joyfulness that comes from living unselfishly. So when I heard this and started to experience it in my meditation, and this question about human free will, maybe some of my recovery of like, well, they're talking about higher power, God's will, and in 12-step recovery, and Buddhism is saying like, well, we don't really talk about those sort of theistic things, and what's the difference between self-will versus self-care, wisdom, and free will. Like, what do you think? Like, do human beings really have free will? Are you choosing? I mean, does free will mean choosing? Are you choosing to cling to pleasure? Are you choosing to take everything that happens in your mind personal? I mean, do you wake up in the morning and say like, you know what, I'm gonna really just be self-centered all day. I have the freedom to choose, and I'm gonna choose that. And I also am gonna choose to hate all of the pain that comes along. And I'm gonna choose to get addicted to anything even slightly pleasant. I feel like part of what this dependent origination model that Amaro is talking about, the Buddhist teaching, is saying that without mindfulness, you're just in this cycle. Humans are just in this cycle of, it's pleasant, cling to it. There's not even really a choice. Without mindfulness, it's an instinctual drive. It's pleasant, cling to it. It's unpleasant, hate it, push it away. All by itself, it just happens. You're not choosing like, I think I'm going to hate pain. I'm going to be aversive. I'm going to be afraid of pain. It's just all by itself. It's just instinctual. With mindfulness, I like that image that he's using. There's a bridge. Okay, I'm at this pleasure bridge. Am I going to cross it? All right, crossing the pleasure bridge usually means clinging, craving, suffering. There's this pain bridge. Crossing it usually means aversion, anger, fear. Am I going to cross it? He's saying with mindfulness, when we train our mind, when we meditate, when we do what we're doing, you'll develop more and more ability to choose. How am I going to relate to this pleasant thought that has arisen? Because I'm awake to it. I'm aware. I'm paying attention now. I see it. Oh, this is a really pleasant thought. Am I going to cling to it? This is a really pleasant sensation. Am I going to cling to it? And there's this drive to cling. And so letting go, non-attachment, not crossing that bridge. Of course, they make it, us Dharma teachers always make it sound so simple. Like and you will live unselfishly. And, years and years and years of training the mind, you get to embody it a bit more. And in each moment, there is that ability. If I'm being mindful, there's more choice. There's more space between, impulse and reaction. So the whole point here is, first noble truth, suffering. Second noble truth, craving. But it's the craving that conditions the suffering. It's the feeling, it's pleasant, unpleasant, our relationship to pleasure and pain and neutrality that dictate whether or not we're going to suffer about what's happening. Does it make sense? The simple fact here is it's not what's happening. We've spent most of our lives blaming what's happening for whether or not we're happy, whether or not we're at peace or at ease. It's not, right? And it's totally normal. That was painful, so I'm unhappy. I'm suffering about it. Rather than this radical perspective, which was like, it was painful and I didn't have enough compassion for it. I met it with hatred. And so I created suffering about that painful experience. I created suffering rather than it was painful, so I suffered, because that's the only choice. If it's painful, you suffer. Buddhism's big promise of you can end your suffering. It's a big fucking promise. You can end your suffering. And in early Buddhism, in this lifetime, through your own efforts in this lifetime, you can so radically shift your relationship to pleasure and pain that you won't suffer anymore. You can do that. Did you like this is a fucking huge, it's a high bar. have compassion for pain, you won't suffer about pain anymore. You'll be like, yep, that hurts. My knee hurts. Yep. But I meet it with friendliness. You can train your mind to do that, your heart. Pleasure. Natural to cling, to crave, to become addicted. The mind, that sort of self-centered thinking problem, normal. Through meditation, breaking our addiction to the mind, breaking our addiction to that impulsive belief, I have to have it, one more. Practicing renunciation, practicing not satisfying the cravings, letting them arise and pass, seeing, oh, yep, just a thought, just a feeling, and I love that he says, it's a lie. I love that he's not so gentle. I tend to kind of be like, well, it's just confusion. He's like, fuck that, it's a lie. Your mind is a liar. Now, we don't want to get too adversarial with ourselves and too judgmental and, too skeptical, but there's like a healthy skepticism towards our own minds. Like, yeah, my mind lies to me every day. And anybody that doesn't know that just isn't wise or isn't being honest, is in some level of denial about what's actually internally happening. The mind lies. And even, and I think that this is important because we think like, yeah, well, maybe my mind lies because I'm unenlightened, but enlightened beings, like the Buddha, do you think the Buddha's mind was a liar? Like maybe you have enough humility to be like, well, my mind's a liar, but I'm a degenerate. But like if I was a kind spiritual person, then my mind wouldn't be a liar, right? Like the nice, spiritual ladies, their minds don't lie to them the way my mind lies to me, or the Buddha mind, But the Buddha, fully enlightened, verge of enlightenment, he's attacked by Mara. Mara is the liar. Mara is the part of our mind, of his mind, of your mind, of everyone's mind that lies to you and says you're unworthy, you don't have the ability, you need one more. Craving, aversion, that mind. And he said, I battled with this part of my mind and I overcame it with compassion and I overcame it with non-attachment. And I saw that it's just not self, not who I am, just what the mind does. But even fully liberated, totally enlightened Buddha, mind kept lying to him. Mara kept returning and saying, hey, Buddha, you should suffer about this. I know there was that other shit that you saw through and, you're celibate and all that stuff, but okay, but this one you should really suffer about. And basically, anytime your mind is telling you you should suffer about this, it's Mara. It's lying to you. This one is worthy of suffering about. And right, the kind of message of you should cling to it, you should get attached to it, is a message of you should suffer about it. This is worth clinging to. This is worth suffering about. This is worth having aversion towards. This is worth suffering about. Resentment, suffering, craving, suffering. It's not what's happening, it's how we relate to what's happening. All right, I'm almost out of time already, so I'm going to jump to the back of the book where the good shit is. It's all good shit. He says, samsara is what we call, this is a Buddhist term for this realm, what we call the earth realm or kind of human existence. Includes 6 different realms. I don't need to get into that. He says, samsara means endless wandering, going around and around, repeating the same patterns. It's a cycle of birth and death, the cycle of addictions. The philosopher George Santayana famously said, "Those who do not learn from the past are condemned to repeat it." The experience of dukkha, suffering itself, can be an exit point from the cycle of addiction. When we experience dukkha, it can ripen in two ways. One is to further dukkha. When we experience dissatisfaction, discontent, loneliness, alienation, it simply makes us hungry for another hit of our drug of choice, whether it's nicotine praise, truffles, or jhanas. There's a whole part in here where he's criticizing the meditators who get addicted to their meditation experience and are chasing bliss and are chasing the jhanas is the absorptions where you have these cool experiences and you're just using meditation as another way to get high and avoid. And so he's like, that's just another addiction. That's not liberation. To take us away from discomfort, or if there is a sufficient wisdom and world weariness. World wearying. Are you weary with the world? This is like a traditional, in order to really solidly be on the middle path, you have to know that the world is a dead end. Your happiness will never come from sense pleasures or from material accumulation. Be weary of the mind saying, but I'll be happy if I have more money. Liar. I'll be happy if I have more pleasure. Liar. But all of our minds do that, and our whole society is set up to support that kind of like, consume, you'll be happy. Doesn't work for anybody, but keep trying. I had a wonderful conversation today with a person who's very successful with like maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, and he's just like, it's just so disappointing that it doesn't work. Just, just doesn't work. But your mind tells you that, but it would work for you, huh? Doesn't your mind tell you that? Didn't work, he's just not doing it right, but it would work for me. Liar. But the mind just does that. It awakens the questions, what's the way out of this? I've been repeating this pattern for so long. What's the way out? There must be a way out. The experience dukkha then awakens faith rather than conditioning more ignorance and more rebirths. This is known as transcendent dependent arising. Then faith leads to the quality of delight, leading to physical and mental ease and contentment, leading to samadhi, concentration, and to insight and to liberation. As we have seen, the most accessible exit points from the addictive cycle is the link between feeling and craving. Another exit point is to not start the cycle at all, nirodha, cessation, the destruction of the causes of suffering. This is to say that the ending of things that has begun, but it can also mean checking, restraining, or non-arising, the renunciation. So with the non-arising of ignorance, when there is knowing, awakened awareness, then sankharas do not arise and so forth. Moment by moment, we are not experiencing an objective world. Rather, we are experiencing our mind's representation of the world. What is the world? The Buddha answered. The eye is the world, the ear is the world, the nose is the world, the tongue is the world, the body is the world, the mind is the world. Is that, are you catching that? So it's not like there's an objective world, it's your perception. Your eye, your ear, your nose, your mind is creating, our perception of the world, rather than it's objective and it's just, there's reality out there. Depends on how you're seeing it. Like we all might have very different perspectives of the same thing based on how much awareness, how much wisdom we're bringing to what we're seeing. All right, let's finish up. Meditation has a radical effect on our attitude. When we shift our perspective and recollect that the whole world is happening in the mind, that gives a broader context for experiencing, and it imbues it with a quality of non-entanglement. breaking our addiction to the mind, acknowledging that I've become so addicted, I have a thinking problem, and recovery from that is non-entanglement. You don't stop thinking, just like maybe a food addict doesn't stop eating, but there's certain unhealthy foods that you refrain from, certain unhealthy thought patterns that you refrain from. You keep thinking, you keep taking, you keep eating the good, healthy green shit. You keep thinking the good thoughts and feeding that wise parts of your mind, and you practice renunciation around the self-centered, fear-based tendencies of the mind. Quality of non-entanglement. The heart can't get so wrapped up in every experience it likes and dislikes. When we are recognizing it's merely hearing and seeing and smelling and tasting and touching, that's what's happening. As the Buddha says in his teaching to Bahia of the bark cloth, he says to him, and this is, I don't have time, but it's a great, maybe I'll do this one next week. I'll just give it brief. Bahia comes to the Buddha, and the Buddha's on alms round, and he says, time is short, give me the Dharma, give me the teachings in as concise of a way as possible. And the Buddha's like, look, I'm busy. I'm out, getting lunch. It's, I'm on alms round. And Bahia asks him again, he's like, please, like, I don't know if I'll get another chance. Give me the teaching. And Buddha says, like, not now, come back after, maybe at 2:00. And he says one more time, he says, please, Buddha, please, like, I need it. It feels urgent. And so the Buddha says, okay, here's the teaching. In the seen, there is only the seen. In the heard, there is only the heard. In the sensed, only the sensed. In the cognized, the thoughts, only the cognized. Since Bahia, there is for you in the seen only the seen, in the heard only the heard, in the sensed only the sensed, in the cognized only the cognized, and you see that there is nothing here, you will therefore see that indeed there is no thing there. And so this is a teaching on not self, that there's not a permanent I experiencing the world, but that it's just sounds and thoughts and feelings. And as you see that there is no thing there, you will see that you therefore cannot be located either in the world of this or in the world of that, nor in any place in between the two. This alone is the end of suffering. Non-location, non-self, non-clinging is the end of suffering. He gives this teaching to Bahia of the bark cloth. And Bahia said, attains nirvana, gets it, boom, enlightened. And then a wild cow comes out of nowhere and tramples him to death. Is the story. He became an arahant and he got trampled to death. Okay, I'm going to end with this last piece. No, I'm going to let it go. I didn't get everywhere. That's fine. I'm going to let it go. It's 9:00. So reflecting on this teaching on our relationship to pleasure, our relationship to pain, how mindfulness is an intervention, how having a healthy skepticism about what our mind tells us, especially when it's encouraging us to cling or to be averse or resentful, that our mind is just not a very trustworthy guide. And it's so hard to have that humility because we have to rely on our minds. We have to make decisions. We have to make plans. We have to. It's one of the reasons why Sangha is so important. Trustworthy, wise friendships. Having relationships with people that you trust and that you can kind of check out your thinking with. And hopefully friends that are wise enough to say, like, yeah, that's a lie. Your mind is lying to you about that. You should totally not do what your mind is telling you to do. And not just on the big things around really stupid decisions, but just on the moment to moment, like, you don't have to suffer about this. You can try to meet it with compassion. You can try to meet it with forgiveness. You can try to meet it with non-attachment, just as we're all doing. And it's one of the reasons why we gather together, to remind each other of this and to support each other in this fucking radical approach to life. Sorry I didn't have more time for questions or discussion of this, but I went off. So thanks for attending, and consider these things and do as you see fit. Buddhism does not ask for blind faith, it asks for wise consideration. I keep seeing those, I think it's like Emmy time around LA, where there's all the billboards and it's like, for your consideration. Please consider our TV show for the, and I feel like the Dharma is like that too. It's like, here's these teachings for your consideration. Please vote for the Dharma. Class is done by donation. Against the Stream is a nonprofit organization that is supported by your generosity. Our rent is about $3,500 a month is our share of the rent. Your donations pay the rent. Money in excess of the rent pay our one employer and one employee who runs the website and helps me register for the retreats and all of that stuff. And then hopefully I also receive some livelihood. For the last couple of years, I haven't received much. I've been mostly paying the rent myself on this place. But now we're actually at a place where the donations are starting to pay the rent, and I'm starting to be able to be supported a little bit again. So thank you, and please continue to support Against the Stream and me and these teachings. And if you're making a donation here, there's a bowl if you have cash. If not, maybe Venmo is easiest, and it's written on the table there. Venmo or PayPal. If you're at home, there's a link in the chat to make donations. And please consider becoming a monthly donor, of actually giving, I think it's like $25, $50, or $100 a month in donations just to support the organization. So if you can do that, please do that. And we'll leave it there. May any goodness that comes from our practice and discussion of the Buddha's Dharma be shared outward in all directions with all living beings. May each one of us learn to not cross that bridge into suffering. And together may we create a positive change on this planet. Two quick announcements. Next week, I'm going to be in San Francisco, especially if you're online, teaching at Soma Dharma, Jeff and Emily's class. So I won't be doing Monday. Monday class will happen. I have a sub coming in, so come anyways. Remember, you're not coming for the teacher, you're coming for the Sangha. So just because I'm not going to be here, don't ditch. Come and sit with each other and support each other. And Ward, who teaches Friday nights for us, will be subbing for me on Monday. And then if you know people that want to come up to San Francisco and see me on Wednesday night in San Francisco, people in the Bay, or let them know it's at Soma Dharma. What's the website, Jeff?
somadharma.com. It's at 5051 Mission Street, 730.
And it's on my social media, 5051 Mission Street, but somadharma.com if you know people up there that might want to come sit with me in the San Francisco Sangha. So thank you, and see you in a couple weeks.